Thank you for tuning in to Mr. Cliff's Toy Shop. On today's review, we take a look at the Super 7 Thundercats Ultimate Slithe. Today I'll be reviewing the figure in the following categories: accessories, articulation, design, is it essential to your collection, functionality, and price. Once all scores are total, I give you my opinion if this figure is a pass or a purchase.
We have right there. Let's do him more.
Next to his arm.
Yeah.
Think is a weapon. We're going to open it up and see. So for accessories, let's take a look at what we get. Pretty decent spread here. So we have two acts. Let's start with the longer of the two. So this one is jagged. It has some wear. Really like how this one looks. Looks like it's been in battle quite a few times. Very happy that the handle portion is done in a hard plastic. For those of you that picked up the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Raphael, those sides were terrible. And then we get another axe which looks new. Looks like this one has not gone into battle yet. We receive a mace. Oh, look at that. If you look here, you can see the seam to where the two separate pieces meet. And does that go all the way around? Yeah, it goes all the way around. They could have done a better job of that, or with that. Then we receive two pair of hands. Let's take a look at this one. Really like that there's texturing on the outside of the hands. You can actually see the imprint of the bones. In between each fingers, you can see the webbing. Really like that. And if you turn it to the inside, there's a blue color with green highlights. Can you stop hitting the camera, please? Really like how these hands look. And then you can see the fingernails. So going on to the face sculpt. It's not a separate head. So face plate, that's what I meant to say, excuse me. So looking at the separate face sculpt, I really like how this is done. The colors look exceptional. There's some texturing. The reds pop, the brown looks good. All of this is sculpted. The ears, the mouthpiece is done in what I'm going to say is a bluish color. You can see the teeth on the side. I really like how the tongue is laying. Really happy with this. So as far as overall accessories, we get a decent spread. A few additional hands would have been cool. So for overall accessories, I'm going to give Slithe a 9 out of 10. So for articulation, just by looking at this figure, I can see that we're going to have some challenges. So starting with the head, how does this work? So the face plate is able to look up that far, down that much, goes side to side and rotates. The arm is able to kick out only that much. It is very tight, but it is able to rotate a full 360 if you choose to. No upper bicep cut. You do have rotation at the elbow, which is single jointed, bending in that much. The wrists are on a hinge. The hinges are done horizontal. Moving to the torso. The torso, no, they didn't do this again. The torso is a singular piece. So he does not crunch forward. He does not crunch backwards. There is no pivot, no pivot. You do have rotation, right? Let's just see how that works there. You do have rotation. You can turn left and right. The leg is able to move forward that much. Backwards appears more than forward. You have very tight rotation. You also have rotation under the knee. The knee is single jointed, bending in barely any at all. The foot is able to go down that much. Let's move that one back. Forward a lot. Good rotation in and out. It also kicks out to the side nearly all the way. If you were wondering, no butterfly joint. Spinning him around, the tail is articulated. Is it? So it rotates. I'm not even sure to count this as a point of articulation. I'm not sure what's moving here. So for overall articulation, this thing is a mess. The torso has no cuts. It doesn't move. The faceplate is able to move This is weird here. So for articulation, this figure is very limited. If you're looking for a figure that's dynamic that you can pose, it will absolutely not be this. So the head actually doesn't move, but the faceplate does. Coming out to the arms, I've seen this type of articulation on more than one figure, so it's nothing new here. The torso is the worst part as it absolutely does not move. Coming down to the legs themselves are pretty functional and articulated. The tail, I would have expected more. We only get a turn here, and if you want to count this hinge up and down. So for overall articulation, I'll be giving Slithe a 4 out of 10. So for design, Super 7 absolutely knocked this out of the park. Let's go ahead and start with this head sculpt. The colors are just beautiful. Looking at the coloring, I really like the green that they went with, and I really like the texturing that you can see all over this figure. If you look at the larger dots or scales, they're actually sculpted, and they're sculpted in a much darker green, as well as his fins. The yellow is very vibrant, and really the blue or grayish blue that you want to call this, I really like how this stands out against the green. You also have some shadowing. If you look on the arms here, you have some darker textures. If you look on the legs, you can see the same thing. Really like how this is done. I like that this band that goes over him is a separate piece, and the coloring looks really good. He looks like he jumped out of the animated series. I think the long cloth should have been made out of a soft material. You can tell that this is plastic. This would be my one complaint there. Just wanted to give you an idea of how he looks from the side. And I really like that the joints are painted nearly the same color green as the figure. So for overall design, I am very satisfied, and I'll be giving Slithe a 9 out of 10. So with Slithe essential to your collection. So Slithe is a member of the reptilian race, hailing from the planet of Plundar. So if memory serves me correct, Slithe actually appeared in the very first episode. He was actually on the planet Thundar before it exploded. He boarded the mutant mothership, destroyed all of the aircrafts that left Thundaria with the exception of the royal flagship. Slithe was able to capture and board the ship. However, the Sword of Thundera awoken, driving Slithe and his minions back to the mothership. So his presence was known from day one, and Slithe appeared in over 60 of the 130 episodes. Slithe is essentially the Starscream to Megatron. Arrogant, cunning, and looking out for himself. So if you're trying to acquire Slithe, do you have other options? Yes, LJN made the early 1980 versions of the Thundercats. Outside of that, I don't think we received a modern version of this Slithe with the exception of the Super 7 figure. We did have a Slithe figure from the 2011 to 2000. So if you're looking to purchase Slithe as an action figure, do you have other options? The answer is yes. LJN made the original Thundercats in the early 1980s. Outside of that, I do not think that we received this version of Slithe again, of course, the exception being Super 7. Bandai, however, did create a Slithe figure based on the 2011 Thundercat figures, which is different from the version we see here. Surprisingly, you can get the version of Slithe, you're looking for them loose, relatively cheap, like around 20 bucks or so. So unless you're collecting vintage figures, you may not want that version. So as far as being essential to your collection, I'm going to give Slithe a 10 out of 10. So for functionality, we have a lot to talk about. So let's start with the stand test. He does stand. My Slithe, for whatever reason, seems to lean a little bit towards the left. Not sure if one of the legs are longer than the other. I've attempted to push the leg forward as much as possible to see how his posture is then. I've also attempted to lean it back as much as possible, but then that doesn't work. So just putting that out there. So let's go ahead and start with replacing this faceplate. I'm assuming you just pull forward. I have not tried this before. There's a huge ball peg right there. Let's go ahead and snap in the other. Okay, that doesn't want to go in. I may have to heat that up. I didn't have to heat it up, just had to apply a lot of pressure. All right, so now let's talk about this whole singular upper torso. So for design-wise, I think it's fantastic, and it works very well for the overall dynamics, the representation, the look of this figure. Now for functionality, it is not great. So instead of having this neck part somewhere along here, a separate piece that would really allow Slithe to have better movement, we don't. Instead, we get this face plate, which when you lift up, you're going to have spacing here. If you lift down too much, you're going to have spacing there. So not so good. Also, not having any movement in the torso, it really doesn't allow the figure to move forward, backwards. Like, you really can't get him in dynamic poses with this limited torso. Also, not having a butterfly joint, he's sort of left to static or vanilla poses. Now, I don't do much action figure photography, so in the end, it's not going to kill me. For those of you who are looking to do so, you're going to have a tough time doing so. Next thing I want to talk about are these straps, which are a separate piece. Design-wise, I really like how they look. However, they are a bit cumbersome. They fall down a lot. So kind of wish that they were glued in place. One reason that I thought that they were loose is so that you could actually remove this entire harness. And if you wanted Slithe to look more just like a regular reptile or lizard man, then you could. However, you can see that this piece is attached to the belt as well as the loincloth, so it doesn't come loose. Now, I've been tugging at the legs to see if I can separate them from the torso. It's probably possible, but I've been unsuccessful in doing so. So now coming to the wrist. As you see, the hinge is horizontal instead of vertical, so being that they hold weapons, they should go up and down. Now, moving on to the tail. All they needed to do was put this on a ball joint. It would have allowed the tail to go around, to pose up, down, side to side. Instead, you're just able to turn it. And if you were wondering if there's a bendy wire, there's absolutely no bendy wire here. So let's go ahead and try the weapons. I'm pretty sure that they should fit in easy enough. I guess you want me to get in a little more than that. All right, so they do. Oh boy, just noticed something else. This is an issue with Super 7 figures. The wrists are super loose. So the moment I put this on, if you have it tilted, it's just going to continue to fall down. And of course, being on camera, that's not going to work. There you go. You can see that the smallest amount of friction, it just comes down. Not happy about that. However, this is something that I've experienced with other Super 7 figures, so it's not surprising to say the least. Gonna go ahead and put this in the other hand. The wrists are also very loose. However, this weapon is not as heavy as that weapon, so you shouldn't have an issue there. Let's go ahead and try this one. Just pry that in. And no issue holding this weapon either. I want to go ahead for a moment and swap out the hands. Usually with Super 7, the pegs are very thin. This one is also thin, however, thicker than some of the others. So looking for another hand. That goes in. This one seems to be a bit tighter than the other. Coming down to the legs, I don't want to say that under the knee is loose, so I'm going to say it's not as tight as it should be. The upper torso of this figure is exceptionally heavy. He has very short legs, and if you look at the legs themselves, they're on an angle. So that weight is not really being distributed properly. It's sort of coming here, and then being that this is loose, it is not holding the figure up as it should. So I would like for this to be tighter. So for functionality, I will be deducting points for this entire singular torso. I will be deducting points for the looseness of the wrist and the limitations in the tail. So for overall functionality, I'll be giving Slithe a 4 out of 10. So for pricing, Slithe comes in at $45. That is before taxes, that is before shipping. Add in the 2, you're looking at a price point of $54. So now is Slithe worth the price of admission? So well, let's see what he comes with. In terms of accessories, we get a decent offering. We get 3 different weapons. Very happy to be able to change the weapons that Slithe comes with. Even though the mace, you can clearly see the seam in between it, I would rather have that item than not. We also get an alternate faceplate. This way we're able to change the expression of Slithe. Now, one of the accessories I felt that we could have gotten more of would have been 1 more pair of hands, possibly 2 hands that are fisted. Nevertheless, I am satisfied with the offering that we get. So for pricing, I had some things to consider. Paint, design, the fact that this is probably a unique scope. So for overall pricing, I'm going to give Slithe a 10 out of 10. That should give Slithe an overall cliff score of 46 out of 60. So I meant to mention this earlier in the video. I don't remember if he's called Slithe in a cartoon, but throughout my childhood, that's what we called him. So if I'm calling him Slithe, this is why. So now, is this figure a pass or a purchase? I think before I can answer that question, we need to have a very quick conversation when it comes to Super 7 and their delays. There is no question that every company right now is having some sort of delay. However, what's taking place with Super 7 and nearly every action figure that they're releasing, with the exception of their reaction line, this is how you lose customers. If Thundercats wasn't a property to where a singular company was doing, and I had other options like I do with Marvel stuff, Star Wars things, or DC products, it is no way that I would still be collecting stuff from Super 7. However, that is not the case. And I want to have a collection full of modern Thundercats. So for me, this is an absolute purchase. It is a fantastic looking figure. Looks wise, this is the best Slithe that we have ever received. And maybe we will ever receive. All right, so let's remove this for a moment and let me bring out some other figures so we can take a look at scale. All right, so let's start with some other reptiles. Here is Slithe by itself. Let's throw in the Marvel Select Lizard.
Is that a lizard?
It is a lizard. Let's throw in the Super 7 Raphael.
Is that a Raphael?
It is Raphael. Let's remove the lizard and let's throw in the Lord of the Thundercats himself, Lionel. Hey, can you stop hitting the camera?
That is a Lord. Hey,
Let's remove Raph. Let's throw in Jackalman. Let's remove Lionel. And last but not least, let's throw in Mumra.
Is that Mumra?
So, thank you for tuning in to Mr. Clip's Toy Shop. I hope to see you during the next review.